Okay, kiddos, time to choose your weapon. Or not. Why choose is what I say. Hello, everybody. So I will make a quick little video covering the basics of traditional inking tools, and the main tools that I do use and a lot of inkers use, and the difference that you can get from each one. And I say choose, don't choose, whatever, is absolutely fine with me. I think whatever works for you is the answer is whatever works for you. If you can get what you need out of whatever you're using, it could be a Q-tip, a stick from a tree, whatever. If it's working for you, hey, that's your tool, that's your weapon. But for today, we're going to cover the three main tools that most of you are probably familiar with and you will have seen many times on whether it be, conventions or on videos. But these are basically the tools that we use. And I think that there will be, and I'll cover like this is kind of like the main categories, but then there'll be other little tools that fits into these like basic categories. To make a long story short, or short story long, we're just gonna go ahead and dive into it. Of course, this is the brush, the Raphael brush, and these are different delivering systems for putting your ink on paper. So this is brush which is very commonly used, and you'll have categories. People will categorize inkers too. Is this a brush inker? Is it a tack pen inker? Are you a nib inker? I think generally we all kind of use a little bit of everything, and I think it's always a good idea that you learn how to use a little everything, because they all have benefits. And I think if you can jump from one tool to the next, especially if you're a professional inker and you're not just inking yourself, you're inking other pencilers, other artists, you might want that flexibility or the versatility, so you can have more work options, or difference to jump from different style of artists to another. Some might benefit more from like something like a tack pen, which is more flatter lines. So okay, I'm not real organized in my talk here, but we'll go ahead and cover the three. So we have the brush, which will give you an idea, kind of a quick little demo or a little example of what they do. You have your brush, which you can totally load up a ton of ink on, and you get the versatility of like super fine to super thick. Has a lot of flexibility, obviously, with, not right now my brush is dry, but we have like the real fine tip to like the thicker brush over here. So you can get like a huge line variation in one stroke, or one without changing tools. So you get a lot of flexibility from thin to thicker, chunkier, more cartoony lines, more weights on your line without having to switch your tools, and it will hold quite a bit of ink and allow for a solid session before you have to redip again. So that's a thing. But you can use these tools to kind of get similar effect as the others, and we'll do that with another video. But basically you've got your thin to thick, and it can go as thick as you want, and it's not going to break on you, obviously, because it's a soft bristle brush tip. So it does give you a lot of line variation but it might take a little bit more practice in learning how to use it and controlling it and how to work with it. I say work with it rather than controlling it, because it gives you a lot of great results, but you have to kind of figure out how to go lightly and allow the brush, the tool, to do what it needs to, and you kind of work with it. And you have, again, here are different things. You have like your line weight, and here's, you know, just simply what the, you know, the difference in, like, if you want to do feathering with your brush and cross hatching or whatever, and you get like more of a thicker look. And here's your maybe like little wiggles, and you can see the difference, just one brush, and you can just do I'll do a little quick dip. So you have your thin, and you can do a whole lot with the same tool without having to switch. So if you're looking to do quick, some quick inking, where you're just outlining something and then you need thick contrasting line, or without having to switch, or if you're like, you know, me, who likes to fill in black as they go without having to leave, like, just doing outline. I'm gonna come in and fill this in later, because if you use a pen, it takes a while. Where if you're using a brush, you can just go, maybe, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and fill it in now, and continue to work, I don't know, without having to switch tools. So the brush is great if you want to just keep going, keep cruising, and keep flowing. And so there's your brush. And with the brush, I have a Raphael, but there are many good ones. I know there are people who use Winsor Newton, and that's their go-to brand. And there's, I think, was it Sharp? And I'm sure many others that I don't, I'm not that familiar with. So, because there's so many like different options and brands that are available out there, and not to say that this is better than any other, but it's just what I use. So if you have a great one, you have a great one. You don't need to switch brand or anything like that. Like I said, if it works for you, great. So that was a long session on brush. Here is, next we have your pen. So this is a Tech pen, and you've seen me use this before too. Tech pens are flat, so you can get one thickness with each pen, and how they adjust for thickness is that you get multiples with different, you know, type of thickness. So these are Tech pens, and you have finer ones and you have thicker ones, so you do have to switch. These are dry out, sorry guys, but you get the idea. They're different in thickness. So it comes with different types of different thickness or different tips. So you can get finer pens and thicker pens, and you have to fill, you have to fill the cartridge. This is the benefit of Tech pens as opposed to like something like a Micron or any other pen that comes with its own ink, is that you can use whatever ink you want. So that is the benefit. The drawback to that is sometimes your ink will dry. So if you don't use your pen that often, it will dry on you, the tip will dry. So you have to constantly keep it moving so the ink doesn't dry in the whole, like, whoops. So the ink isn't going to dry in this whole like chamber, and this let's see, the cartridge is in here, you fill it. I'm not unscrewing it at this point, but you fill it and the flow comes through the tip there. And if you need to clean it, you have to use your little tool or pliers unscrew this, clean it out. So it can be a pain in the butt if you don't use it that often. It's almost not like worth it. But it's great for if you're using, if you're working on background where you want just flat lines, consistent flat lines without having to dip or clean your brush or nib. It's real simple to use. It's, you know, you just load it up, do all your background or whatever your flat line where you don't need a whole lot of like flexibility in line weights, or if you're just going for a flat look, that's great. And you can, it's not like you can't get thicker lines out of it. You just kind of have to go over it more than once. And filling in blacks is, you can do your outline. I'll come back and fill that in later. Just put an X on it. Come back with your brush and fill it, because otherwise, you sit there for quite a while trying to fill it in. It doesn't look that great. So that's the only thing. Not the only thing. That's one of the things that if you're a little impatient, or you can have your little pen on the side and you can fill in the black as you go. Ooh, which, yep. So you can do that if you want to. So, and that's from this brush pen. Okay, so that's your tech pen, and something that kind of would fit in that category would also be, I mentioned the microns. So that's another that also I think fits in categories, just another inking pen, flat line. So you have to get different pen size to get different line thickness and switch that in and out. But the microns have, it's come pre-filled. So it comes with its own ink. If you don't like that ink and if it fades, you don't know, when you buy these sort of disposable pens, you just don't know the quality of ink you're gonna get. So if the ink is important to you, and it should be, if you want something to last, you are taking a little bit of a risk not knowing, if you're not used to like that particular brand. If you don't know how long the ink is gonna last you, if it's gonna fade with time, with sunlight or daylight or whatever. So you're taking a little bit of risk with that, but it has that convenience, and it is pretty, kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say rookie friendly, but it is kind of rookie friendly. So you don't have to worry about having to really figure out how the tool works like you would with a brush. Or the third category we have, which is the nib for inking tools. So the other major tool that you'll see often in professional inkers in our arsenal is the nib, the quill, crow quill, nibs. So whatever dipping point, mapping point, people call them different things, but these are basically, keep these guys still, metal points. They're your dipping pens, and you dip, and they usually have like a little split, so that would be what draws the ink to the tip. And you have similar flexibility as with your brush in terms of like line weight. So you can do thin, you can go thin right into thick, because it's harder than, it's kind of like a metal brush, so it's harder than the brush tip. You can still get that flexibility, so you can get versatility, line versatility. So I think that the only problem is you do run out of ink much faster, so you have to dip a lot more often, and you're also at the mercy of the quality of paper. So because it is a metal tip, it can tear into your paper if you don't have good paper, whereas the brush is a lot more softer and it's gentler on paper. So if your paper isn't that great, you don't run the same risk of like pulling up paper fibers, and really, like, if you have paper fiber on your nib, tip, you're gonna, it's like dragging a little fuzzy mop through your lines. So if you're working with fine lines, or if you're working with little fine details on face or whatever, you're gonna, your line's gonna be all fuzzy, or your detail will be ruined. You're gonna have to come back and do cleanup or redo it. So you're lowering your risk of like bleeding also with the brush, as opposed to like the nib, which, like I said, is a little rougher on the surface. So you have to be sure that you have good quality paper, so you're not going to like just pull up fibers. And you pray to the gods that you have good paper. If you don't, you just pick up your brush and just follow through, work with your brush instead, which I like about the brush, because some paper, I've encountered paper which I think all of us, have. You, as an inker, you get whatever paper the penciler send you. So if they happen to have bad paper, they may not know it's not good for inking. You're kind of stuck with that. So you're going to have to make it work somehow. And this is where I use the brush to come rescue me quite often, so I don't have to deal with the bleeding, and nothing like cleaning up a whole lot of details on like a beautiful set of lines or cross hatching that has bled, and especially if it's on like a face or hair or something like delicate. So brush has been my solution to, if I encounter a really bad paper that bleeds. So gentler on paper, on real fine detail, is your brush. So there's that. Okay, so that kind of covers like the three main group. And like I said, there's so many other updated new tools that I've not even used or not even familiar with, but whatever works for you, I say, go for it. And what and play around, like, you can, like, I've tested other pens or new stuff that comes onto the market, or other artists have used, and I get curious about, but I always kind of go back to these basics. You can definitely play around for fun and experiment, but if you need to produce and you have to go to your reliables, then you do. But okay, so yeah, these are our main three, and they're actually so with the brush, you have like, this is like a natural brush, so it has natural hair right there for the tip. Under that category, I'll say that you guys have probably seen these synthetic brushes too, which you do get to fill. I think some come with their own ink, but you can fill it with your own ink. And there are a lot of pens where you can do that too, using like a syringe. Adam Archer has a great video on filling tools with, that comes with ink, to remove that and fill it with your own ink with, like, these sort of brush pens or other tech pens or fountain pens. So there are ways to refill it with your own ink if you like. It's worth it. But yes, so brushes, natural brush, synthetic brush. This is convenient to go to conventions or do sketches, or if you're running around, you can grab and go. You don't have to bring your whole well and your whole like inking system with you. So there's that. And of course you have your tech pen, which you have your microns that kind of fit under that category, and a lot of different makers, Rot Ring, Repeato Liner, and a whole, I'm sure, bunch of others that I'm not familiar with, just because I don't know. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold or flu or something. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of other brands that I might not know of that might be totally awesome. All right. Okay, so back to the nibs. So I have, this is a hunt. I know I should get into editing. So this is a Hunt 102. But there's also like zebra, there's gelato, there's, I have, dang it. I have a couple other ones that have been sent to me by some friends, and I might not know the name of them all, but if you find interesting looking nibs that you want to try out, why not? Give it a try, experiment with them and play around and see what kind of fun stuff you can do with it. So, and with these nibs, you have different holders that you can get, so whatever works for you. Again, this one is an old aluminum one that I've had for a long time. I don't know if people have these available anymore, but I got this from the Q*bert store a long time ago. Introduced to me by Mark Irwin, another studio inker, Wildstorm inker. So these are like their clutch holders, and the Hunt happens to be the round, like there's different types too. So these just go into the clutch holders, and this adjusts to hold it tightly. And you may have seen like the other holder, which is like the brown plastic one, works just as well. For me, it just takes a little, this holds it nice and snug. With the brown ones, I always had to kind of like wrap tape or something around it so it fits in there nicely. So that's a clutch holder for my Hunt 102. But like I said, I think gelato, some people use gelato, and I'm curious about, but I haven't used very often, which is supposed to be like a softer metal, so it has more flexibility. But Hunt I've used many times, and so this is the same thing, clutch holder, just happens to be a fancier one. I like this one because it's a little bit thicker and is made by my friend Dan at Ink Slinger Pens. It's beautiful, so it's kind of like a fun toy for me. Also clutch holder, same thing, you can adjust. And the wonderful thing is that if you're traveling, I just like take it out, flip it. If you have a really awesome nib, it's perfect for that. You're protecting your nib. As you travel, you don't have to worry about snagging the tip or bending it. So if you're traveling and you want to bring your favorite nib, which took you forever just to find, so these holders are great for that. And another type of, let's see, the other type of nibs, no, these are not, okay, great, I'm not gonna be able to get it out, but it's more, there we go. It's not the same, so it needs a different holder. It has more of like that curve rather than the round. So it needs a different holder that has a little slot that you slide it into, and it holds it in nicely. So fortunately they make pen holders for all these different things. And if you're looking for like fun holders like calligrapher sites or calligraphy pens, there's different kinds of nibs and pen holders that will work for this if you're, you know, curious into, again, Ink Slinger Pen make these. They're kind of fun. But there are all kinds of different holders and nibs if you want to play around, experiment with, you know, different quills that has more of a softer feel or a harder feel. The softer feeling more like a brush, working more like a brush, and the harder tip will be more like the pen. So whatever your preference is, whatever works for you, whatever you have the most fun with. But so yeah, so your brush, you have your regular synthetic, your pen, microns, your rapidographs, and your nib, which, you know, like I said, there's bazillions of different brands you can get, different softness, thickness, and different holders, all fun to play around with. And oh, haha, I almost forgot about this guy. So in between all those things, we have these other pens, which I'll put that in the 4th category. Again, they come preloaded with ink, so some you can fill with your own ink, but it is more a fixed tip, but it has a little flexibility, so you can get more line weights out of one pen. I can't guarantee the quality of the ink, so you might have to test it out for yourself. And these are more like a felt tip with decent ink. You have the Tombow, you have the Zebra, which I've tested a couple. I test ink on like whether or not they're how fast it dries. If it dries, some are a little more oily, it doesn't dry, so when you erase, it is going to smudge on you. Some might kind of be not so friendly, not as water resistant, so if you do any white or correction or anything over, you have to be careful to test, make sure you test it and make sure your white is not going to blend in or pull that ink up, so you end up with a gray mess instead of anything like a clean correction. So that's where you also have to play around with your whites too. So that's how I test out like my ink. But generally I use my own ink on all this stuff, so that's why I stick with the old tool and my old ink. So that is kind of like a rough discussion on the main traditional inking tools. And as I've said before, whatever works for you. And these are just some of the basics that we use, like the main delivery systems that a lot of inkers use and we might have in common. We do play around with a whole bunch of other different stuff, so it's not to say that use these and nothing else, and if you don't use these, you're not an inker. It's crazy. But use whatever you need, and obviously if you're a penciler who's inking themselves, you use whatever the heck you want. Who's gonna complain, your penciler? So I think it's always a good idea, going back to a question that I've been asked many times is like, how do you know what kind of ink to use, what tool to use, and when you're inking different pencilers, I think a good rule is like maybe talking to your penciler. If you've never worked with each other before, it would be good for them to know what you do, and it's also good for you to know what they're looking for, because I think that the best way to work together is to have that communication going, because you're not always going to be a perfect match, but if you can kind of accommodate each other to where you each have freedom, and we're going to, what can we do to complement each other or work together well so we bring out, the best product rather than constantly like butting heads. So I think it's good to communicate and see and get a clear idea of what they're looking for, and if you're the person to give them that. So yep, so hopefully that little discussion was helpful, and if nothing else, hopefully it encourages you to look into experimenting with different tools, and not to give up, because you have to remember that everything takes getting used to. You can't just pick up like a nib, say that doesn't work for me, or pick up a brush and say that doesn't work for me. Give it time for you, give yourself time to learn to work with any tool. It's like picking up a bicycle and say, oh no, I can't ride a bike. I mean, give it time. You have to figure out how it works and how you work with it. So like I said, hope that helps, and there's a million more other stuff that you can use that isn't on here. So I encourage you to play and explore and have fun, and we'll see you next time. Maybe we can use all these different tools to ink me, see one thing, just to see the difference. Okay? All right. Take care, guys. Don't get sick at the con. All right. Bye.